As some of you have figured out, I've slinked my way into the Old Hunters LP on my tiny little cat feet. But, seriously, why now? Why not before or never? Well, I just wanted to take a minute right now to explain my fascination with Bloodborne and Bloodborne-related activities. So for your consideration, I humbly present... The first thing that struck me about Bloodborne when I first saw it is its unique fantasy setting, although that is a bit of a disingenuous oversimplification, as to me it's actually kind of a hybrid of fantasy and reality. Whereas the Souls games are very firmly rooted in a medieval time frame that contains a whole host of races and creatures and magic, the world of Yharnam seems like it could almost be a real place, albeit a dark and hyper-stylized Gothic one. This blending of two styles is the thing that really grabs me. There's gods and there's magic, but there's also firearms and machines. There's no indigenous monsters or races that casually roam the countryside, but instead what life there is has been corrupted or transformed into something hideous and vile. I like it when fictional worlds have some type of basis in reality, however faint, but then are blurred together with another element that's just completely alien. You always feel uncomfortable when you're in a somewhat familiar setting, but then you come to realize you're in a twisted nightmare version of it. I'm being a little vague here, as this is somewhat of a hard point to articulate, but then again, From Software loves being a little vague and obscure as well. Shortly after the game had come out, I started hearing people hinting at greater things in the lore of Bloodborne. Otherworldly things. Now, I've been pretty transparent with my love for underpinnings of Lovecraftian horror weaved into other fiction, and I can honestly say the usage of it in Bloodborne is incredibly potent, and one of the things I adore about it the most. Chief among the reasons why it's so effective is that it's used rather subtly. If you don't know anything about Cthulhu or Dagon or gross fish shit, you won't be any worse off. But if you do have a familiarity with those weird names I just mentioned, then you'll appreciate Bloodborne all the more.
Our eyes are yet to open.
This is unlike, say, Eternal Darkness, which very, very liberally just rips off entire sections of plot from various Lovecraftian works. From Software instead does its own thing with some of the more general themes. Mankind's existence is infinitesimal at best, and the very knowledge that ancient space deities even exist is enough to drive one mad and turn into a slavering beast, or cause one to do terrible things in the search for this truth. This is where Madman's insight comes into play, and I think it's such a cool concept. Your mind can't immediately comprehend how fucked up this monster is, or how weird its dickhole must be. So, hey, if you crack open this insane dead guy's skull and scoop out his knowledge, you'll understand just how bad things really are in Yharnam. The notion of cosmic beings that operate on unheard of planes of existence, simply just reaching down and barely grazing our minds with their majesty, is a frightening but altogether fascinating thought. Nothing brings me more giddy thrills than when a piece of fiction pulls back the curtain just a bit to show you something that's truly worthy of being feared. I touched upon it a bit earlier, but the Gothic European stylings of Yharnam give it such a palpable sense of atmosphere. Not to say that there hasn't been memorable locations in other Souls games, but I think that Yharnam really feels like a lived-in place that might have been real in some twisted way. This is probably due to the heavy amount of research trips Miyazaki and his team took to places like Romania and Prague. While the main layout of the city has a lot of impossible geography, it's the small details culled from the history of Europe that's worked into the environments that give it a sense of old-world richness. This then brings me to think of another series that's taken a lot of inspiration from Europe as well, that being Castlevania. While the Lords of Shadow games are a lot of things, they do have tons of strong art and level production, but it was never utilized to its full potential. Bloodborne to me is the Castlevania game we should have gotten. Everywhere you look, your eye is drawn to dagger-like spires, ladders and staircases, secret passages, foreboding moons, fog-covered forests, gears and steam-based machinery, dank sewer passages, and that's not even mentioning the bestiary of creatures nestled within those confines. All of these aspects just scream Castlevania, or even more generally, just gothic horror to me, so it's no surprise that the places you visit in Yharnam are really strong reasons why I've been so taken with it. Something that Bloodborne does equally well as any other Souls game is incredibly strong boss and creature design. No matter what game FromSoft works on, you can always count on your enemies being just so fucked up that you can't help but admire them. This is a common thread that weaves throughout all these games that I personally adore. I love monsters and beasts and creepy crawlies, and seeing how just a bit of imagination and creativity can mold nightmarish horrors that can shatter the very fabric of one's sanity. It's a special feeling. Okay, with all that said, it's hard for me to pick a favorite amongst the various beasts and ghouls that stalk the streets of Yharnam. If I was to give a special mention to a boss, however, I'd have to pick Lumpy Space Princess herself, Ebriatis, the daughter of the cosmos.
Oh my glob, what the stuff are you doing? You can't resist me. Well, if you want these lumps, you gotta put a ring on her.
Okay, I'm just cutting straight to the heart of the Great Ones here, as yeah, she really does resemble something out of Lovecraft, but it goes a bit deeper than that. Ebriatis looks so ancient, worn down, and kind of sad, and the fact that she's just sitting there, unmoving, in this dank, cavernous room, seemingly kneeling over something, is haunting enough as it is. But the fact that the corpse she's kneeling over is Rom, the radical spider, is something else altogether. Maybe people have been reading too much into it, but she seems to be lamenting Rom's death, which, if you remember, is at your hands. That's a small detail you don't get often from these boss encounters. Like, did Ebriatis have a thing with Rom? Were they planning on having, or like, adopting little creepy, batwing, squiddy, fatty spider babies together? Or did Rom's body just fall down from the sky and land on top of her, and she's just like, yo, bro, You okay, bro? While we're on the subject of the radical spider, I'm really intrigued by the notion that slaughtering Rom might actually have been an ill-advised move. Once you've done this in the main game, things just go from worse to fucked in Yharnam, leading credence to the idea that Rom was actually holding back a layer of insanity from infecting the waking world, and killing him, her, it actually releases it. For gross insectoid space deities, this is a surprising amount of backstory for them to have. Hell, it's more character development than any David Cage game has ever had. quest lines are a big part of the tangled web of lore that FromSoft likes to weave, and while they're not always important, they are, at the very least, always interesting. The particular sequence of events that I'd like to talk about is the story of Alfred and the Vile Bloods. Now, I won't go into every detail here, as most of you probably already know this stuff, but to summarize, Alfred is a hard motherfucker who hates all the snooty dickbags who live up at Cainhurst Castle. Yeah, look at him up there, in a big fucking stupid gothic like frozen mansion. Oh man, I hate these fucking Cainhurst assholes. Fucking Vile Bloods, fucking suck my dick. So fast forward in a bit, if you give the summons parchment to Cainhurst's big Equinox charity ball-orama to Alfred, he'll finally be able to sneak in there and do his dirty business under the guise of being an invited guest, I suppose.
I will depart immediately, but first, a token of my gratitude.
When you find him, he'll be all dolled up in his Pyramid Head cosplay and conspicuously be drenched in the brain matter and gore of Queen Annalise, whom he clearly hates. He'll then go on a rant about how bad he wrecked her and then perform the ultimate mic drop by just killing himself, right? His job done and being really satisfied with how it went. But it doesn't quite end there, because if you want, you can just then pick up the Annalise goo and then just resurrect her at your leisure, making all of Alfred's work and sacrifice utterly meaningless. I really like this questline just because it shows, the lengths that some people will go to, carry out their mission or get revenge, and then I just like getting a big eraser and just erasing it, saying, see, revenge is stupid a lot of the time. Not all the time, though. Lots of Souls veterans dislike some of the changes in Bloodborne, and I can understand that when things are altered or maybe even simplified from a core set of rules and templates, it can feel like things are maybe being dumbed down. There are other people, however, who are just old, crotchety, smelly hermits, and they're never happy with anything. Speaking strictly from a very casual perspective, I have to say I greatly prefer the speed afforded to hunters, and their much more unique and, yes, undoubtedly smaller number of armaments when compared to, say, 30 different varieties of maces. With that in mind, I'm also somehow just able to judge distances and what I can and can't do better in Bloodborne, and I just feel more capable right out the gate. And in conjunction with that, trick weapons that offer me either fast but weaker hits and ranged and more powerful attacks is a much appreciated infusion of versatility. And while not nearly to the levels of Capcom or Platinum character action, these tiny changes make the moment-to-moment gameplay just click with me. And I'm not saying it's any better or worse than prior games, it makes more sense in my head. Before I move on, I need to say how visceral attacks are literally one of the most satisfying combat mechanics in recent memory. While nothing about them is overtly unique or new to video games, the feedback and, visceral nature of landing one of these is just immensely gratifying. And the fact that it's not achieved with a parry or a block per se, but with a fucking gunshot makes it all the more impressive. By this time, you'll notice that I haven't talked once about blood gems, runes, builds, or stats of any kind, really. Honestly, while I understand the appeal of micromanagement and fine-tuning every aspect of your character via menus, it's not something I value all that much personally. Just ain't my thing. More of a visual guy, and I like my character to just look cool, dashing, and incredibly badass.
Like me.
I still haven't done everything in the base Bloodborne game yet, but I'm really thankful I got to experience the old hunters with Wooly and Pat. They're really nice about just letting me just kind of slide right in there. I know this is kind of an odd video for me to make, and I'm late to the game on all this, but it's something I really wanted to just expand upon in a format that an LP can't always provide. So I hope you guys really enjoyed my thoughts on this incredible game, and this wasn't really intended to be a review or anything, but more of a series of just general musings, and it's a spectacularly morbid world that I feel is just one of the most fascinating I've seen in a long, long time. And while I'm never a fan of, developers getting kind of stuck in a rut and just making sequel after sequel after sequel, I can't help but say that, I'd really like to see more Bloodborne in the future. And I hope I gave you all a bit of insight into why I find it so appealing.
Farewell, good hunter. May you find your worth in the waking world.